Computer. Fantastic. We're good to go.
All right.
Awesome.
Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, good. I think we're great. Awesome. Thanks everybody for joining us. It's May 25th, and this is the Kubernetes community meeting. We've got a pretty packed schedule today, and I think we need to fit the first half of it into about 30 minutes, and then the second half will focus on some governance pieces. So I guess I should mention I'm Elon. I'm with Datadog, and excited to be emceeing for the first time here. First up, we have some demo automation stuff with Garrett Rodriguez around the Kubernetes GitHub organization. So with that, Garrett, you want to take us away?
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Elon. Hi, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Garrett. I work on contributor experience. I'm at Google, and I'm working with Elsie as the contributor experience lead. We focus on some of the tooling and automation as well as policies. I guess we have a pretty broad mission of just improving contributor experience across the Kubernetes organization. Today, I wanted to talk about some of the metrics, some of our bot triage policies, some of the stuff related to the 1.7 release, some automation things that have come up recently, some of our newer automation, some of GitHub's automation, and then lastly, just a quick plug to get some feedback for the features process, and that's actually from SIGPM. So first, I actually have Dawn sitting next to me, and she's the release lead for 1.7. So her, Maru, and the release team discussed some of the policies for the 1.7 release. And as in, I think the 1.6 release, they want every issue in the 1.7 milestone to be considered a release blocker. So if you go to the Kubernetes repo, and everyone should be able to select milestone, and if you select v1.7, there's another one that we need to delete, so make sure you get the v1.7. You'll see that there are I turned it off, 240-ish open issues, 242, and by the time we release, that should be down to 0. Every issue is going to require one of the SIG labels. So if you look in there, there are these kind of brownish tan labels that represent a SIG. We need at least one per issue that's in the milestone. And I'm going to talk about how you can add those to your issues as you create them, even if you're not in the org, or if you don't have maintainer access or write access to the repo. And then every PR, this is another thing that may be new. This policy may be new for this release. Every PR should be associated with an issue. Obviously, there's an asterisk at the end if you've got something like a comment fix or a typo or something like that. You don't need an issue for it, but larger features they should be in the features repo, but larger bug fixes and big code refactors should definitely have issues associated with them. The other new thing for the 1.7 release are these status labels. And the idea is that in past releases, a number of us have gone by, and you've noticed we've pinged you if you owned an issue and said, hey, what's the status? And getting pinged 3 or 4 times when you're working on something might be a little annoying. So we'll have these status labels that will indicate 5 states. So when you open an issue, by default, it's going to be in the open state, and then you can move it into the milestone. How are we going to move it into the milestone?
Because right now we can control everyone. If they can modify, they can move that into the milestone. But it's moved to milestone not mean your group sponsor that issue or whatever, okay. And who delegate should be approved for that milestone.
So the SIG has to accept it, is
yes.
The idea.
Yes.
So you can add the SIG label to your issue, but a SIG has to accept it and move it into the milestone for it to be considered for 1.7. And then from there, the SIG is responsible for assigning it to someone or someone taking ownership. And again, that just requires moving into status under development. And then it'll be in review and finally closed. So we've got these status labels, which should help us improve visibility into kind of the life cycle of an issue. And again, I'll cover how we can add the SIG and kind labels along the way. So for gaining visibility into this, at Contributor Experience, we had this company called Sappho come in and show us their tool, and they let you build micro apps pretty easily without having to write a ton of code. And I think they'll probably do another demo at Contributor Experience. I'll send that out to the wider mailing list so that we can all learn how to do this. But they have a SQL backend that syncs up with GitHub. And if you go to their app, you'll have to log in. I'm already logged in, so it pulled me up here. But if you log in with your GitHub account, they have like an OAuth. You can click on the milestone SIG chart and select, again, V1.7. And we have the breakdown by SIG, so we can see which ones are in the milestone and actually don't have a SIG label. So there are 28 issues right now, and then the rest of them have associated SIGs. And if you click on a specific SIG, you'll see the breakdown. And eventually, this is going to show the status labels that I was talking about before. So we'll be able to get those 5 states: open, open, accepted for the milestone, in progress, needs review, and then closed. Right now, this is just showing all the area labels just for demo purpose. So this is still a work in progress. But this is the tool that the release team is going to use at the burn down meetings, which is starting next week, actually. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about bug triage. Just a few quick bits of trivia I thought would be a little bit of fun. I looked at the repo, and I wanted to see if we could answer these questions. It looks like there are around 18,000 total issues open, 4,700 human open ones. There are 4,890 currently open, but these like 100 or so were bot open, the kind flake ones, so I filtered those out. And then of the ones that are open right now by humans, about 40% of them don't have a SIG label at all. Yeah, that's a little high and a little bit painful. Another like piece of statistics I was able to pull out is of the issues that are open, about 60% of them are open by org members. So we should really be doing better at assigning labels. I know the 60% is kind of in line with the 38% here, assuming everyone from the org is adding their SIG labels. And then since I had the data up, I just thought I'd pull out some trivia for the top issue openers as well. Thanks, Tim. So some of the policies that we've discussed, we haven't finalized a lot of them, but these things are, everyone seems to be in agreement. So I don't know if we've written them down everywhere, but support issues are really not intended for the Kubernetes repo. Please redirect back to Stack Overflow. I think we actually have a link for the policy for that. Someone wrote this nice message that kind of gives us a way to politely redirect not feature requests, but support issues to Stack Overflow. So take a look at that. It's in the community repo under contributors, devel, and the on-call.
So can I add just a little nuance to that?
Yeah,
Sometimes
absolutely.
it's hard to tell when somebody's requesting help, whether it's actually a bug or whether it's just that they don't understand or have set things up. So sometimes you need 2 or 3 messages before you realize that they're just asking for help with setup, or that they've got some bad docs, and then go ahead and do this. I frequently find myself saying, I don't know, this could be a bug.
Yeah, so we should try and verify first, I guess is the point. But once it's clear that it's a request for support, suggest that they move to Stack Overflow. And then routing issues to respective repositories. This is actually in the issue template right now.
Sorry, just to go back to the previous point for 1 second, I don't think that we actually have that policy in our issue template to say, if you're asking for support, please go here instead of opening an issue. So I'd suggest we just update the template to, because then we don't have to have humans doing that.
Sure, but nobody reads that.
Yeah, and the template has been not very effective.
Well, I mean, putting it there is more effective than not having it there at all, I'm sure.
No
People won't read it.
No argument there.
What I really want is a bot that auto-closes anything that doesn't have minimum metadata.
Well, yeah, and we've also talked about that. For at least for org members, there's some expectation that they should know what to do.
So that expectation leads into our next topic. That's great. So first of all, there's a few things that we can do. If you write a PR that is associated with an issue, as all things in the milestone should be, and in general, if you write a PR that's closing an issue, try using the fixes keyword. And I can do a quick demo of that in I've got another repo open here. And this is just okay, I got 4 minutes. So this is a test repository. And I believe if I write fixes number, fixes some issue, I can go ahead and I make the comment. And if I merge the PR, it'll close the issue.
It used to be that you had to comment that in the PR description.
Okay, you might have to make that comment in the pull request itself, but GitHub has these keywords called like fixes and closes. Just focus on fixes for now, that you can use to automatically close an associated issue. And we want people to be using those as well.
Yeah, in general, please reference issues or other pull requests in the PR description, not in the commit messages. Because if you put it in the commit messages, it causes traffic on whatever you linked to every time you push new commits. But yeah, I believe that fixes has to go into the first comments in the PR, so the opening message.
Okay, and along similar lines, you can use /cc and /uncc. I haven't tried these out myself, but I believe this adds or requests GitHub reviews. The automation that we've added that's helpful as far as triaging is the capability to add the SIG and kind label and mention a team regardless of whether or not you're in the org. So I've got this test account. You'll see that I'm signed in with somebody that's not a member of the Kubernetes org. And this is an issue that is right now open, and it's got no labels on it. So if I want to add it, I can do it in a few different ways. One, I can type /SIG and then the SIG that I'm trying to add. So in this case, sorry network, and kind bug. And we can look, you can look at all everyone has the capability to look at the labels that are open. But if I add that in a comment, the robot will actually add the SIG network and the kind bug label.
Who can send those commands?
Anyone can send those commands. So this is a test account that has no privileges. It was created yesterday, not a member of the org, 0 privileges at all. So anyone should be able to do this. The other thing, a few SIG leads mentioned that they respond to issues based on emails. So these don't actually trigger emails. Adding the labels don't trigger emails. So instead they want the notification. And this requires a little bit more work because you need to know the name of the, let's try scheduling this time. You need to know the name of the SIG. If you type this and you're not in the org, this actually does not trigger a notification. But what will happen now is the bot will recognize that and should be chattering back. I guess, yeah. So it added the label and it chattered back, and this one will actually trigger a notification. It's a little painful, and we need to work on discovery so that it's easy for non-org members to figure out which teams are there. Because as you may have noticed, I didn't get the autocomplete. So we need to add the capability to figure out the team names. But this is a start, at least, at getting the notifications out.
So this is, I talked to GitHub people this week about this, and this is by design for now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and team members are also not visible to non-org members.
Yes, you have to be in the org to see anything related to teams.
Yeah, so we're planning to define team membership using files checked in the GitHub, and then have some automatic sync from those files to the GitHub teams, so that it will actually be obvious who's in what team, even to non-org members.
That makes sense.
Just a reminder that we've got a few other folks in the agenda, and we have about half the meeting reserved for governance topics. So
Okay. Well, I'm just about done. The last thing was just the things that we have left to do, making discovery of the commands a little bit easier, making the team names easier, and then as our PR docs got updated recently, so the pull request has been consolidated. Or 3 docs got consolidated into 1, so the PR policy is available here. And I sent out an email for a survey for feedback for SIG-PM. And lastly, please participate in contributor experience.
Can you stop sharing your screen then?
I can.
Awesome. So we have a couple requests in the chat. Just if you wouldn't mind putting the link in the notes for the call, or if you could put the link to your presentation in the chat here, we'll get it into the meeting notes for everyone afterwards. But
yep,
thanks, Garrett.
Sure.
Cool. So Awesome. So we're next up. We have release updates, and it looks like we have Don Chen starting us off with updates around the 1.7 release. Are you with us, Don?
Yes. Good morning, and
Morning.
So the code freeze, it is next Thursday. So currently, I quickly look at our main repo, and we still have the 243 open, like what Garrett earlier mentioned. Many of these not associated with the same groups at all. And we also have why my slides is not full? It's not completed here. So we also have the feature in the feature report. We still have the 49 open, and there are many open PRs without issues associated also. So one thing it is right now, I believe everyone engineer is working on the send more PRs, and also at the same time also busy with the review of the PRs. So we plan to schedule the first beta 0, next Wednesday. It is the May 31st. So we are kick out like the first beta process. So we are going to start since we don't have the active build cup nowadays. So since this Friday, we are going to stay close. The release management team is going to stay close with all those critical builds. And we may kind of lagging engineered or say groups. Okay, here it is the flaky test, and please track those flaky tests and how important. So we kick out those kind of the process earlier compared to previous release. So then once the code freeze, we kick out, then we start the exceptional process. So exception process is going to, we'll start to accept exception request on the June 1st. But if you feel your feature, it is really individual and you are going to miss that deadline, you could start thinking about. It is you're going to just leave that this release, or is going to you are going to file the exceptional request. So we have the prerequisite for the exceptional request. It should be no risk, of course, for the Kubernetes. It's not like the feature. If you finish the whole feature, maybe it's no risk. But right now, if it is not tested incomplete, or it is the PR, it is in the half-cooked PR. So please don't send those requests. And also, we require like if you are going to have you estimate you only have the one. Most of the things is done. Only have the one PR is open. And is send out some of the reviewers, the review process. You could, I think that's kind of like the feature you can consider send the prerequisite, the exceptional request. The deadline for the exceptional request, it is the June 5th, because we need the time, the release management team need the time to look at each SIG groups and figure out the decision. So the decision is going to be made it on I think it's our first burn down meeting in the June 7th or second burn down meeting, I forgot exactly. So we choose those dates, and so that's the current proposal. So first, next one, it is the release burn down meeting. So release burn down meeting is going to start from the June 5th. So it's going to every other day. We are going to the 3 times each week. So if you have the certain question related to release and your feature and the quality, and please feel free to join those and discuss with us. So we also we already have the upgrade test ready from the previous release to the master branch. We have that being run for more than 2 weeks. So we already found the several issues, and the engineer is working on those things, and there's a couple examples there. So if you, some it is related to the apps, SIG apps, and some is related to the network team. So engineer already help on those things. So next one, it is we should kick out the documentation for the release. And I think I have the Andrew. Andrew, are you here?
Yeah. Can you guys hear me all right? Hey, so I'm Andrew Chen. I work on the docs team, and I'm in charge of the release process for the 1.7 docs. So if you have features going into 1.7 that will require documentation, please add them to the feature tracking board. There's a link in the slide deck that, Don, you'll be sharing this, right, with the community?
It already has been.
Okay, cool. And then, so then make sure that's in there because I need a complete list to make sure all the documents go in. And
So,
then,
quick question about that. In the past, folks have added items to the feature repository issues and marked them with a milestone, and someone's gone through and consolidated those onto the tracking board. Is this a different process now? I guess instructions are to go in and add items to the tracking board directly.
yeah, I would prefer it through the tracking board. I mean, obviously, I will check it against like the stuff in the PR queue. But it's easier if I sort of see ahead of time. Because if you know, like you have a feature that requires documentation, you can put it into the tracking board now and then create, a PR further down the line. But it's easier for me to see up front because then I can start communicating with the feature owners and make sure they know where to put the docs and answer any questions that they have. But I would like the PRs to be opened by June 14th. So that we see a complete list. I mean, they don't have to be finished, but like sort of in progress. And then at the very least, tag them with the 1.7 milestone so that they won't accidentally end up in the master branch. Because I can always move them from master into the release-1.7 branch, which is already open now. But sometimes, I guess they had slipped through in the past, so I want to be more diligent about that for this one.
So that
Yeah, just one note from me again in the features board. As you mentioned, so we had the similar process with the previous releases when people have been creating the new features for specific release in the features repo. I've been consolidating them in the previous release, and I will do the same for this release together with the documentation team. At the same time, I'd like to ask feature owners to do that from their side because it will much simplify our job, my Andrews.
So permissions on the tracking board, I don't have permissions to it. Was it shared to Kubernetes dev?
They have been shared with Kubernetes dev. Let me check the permissions, and if they're on, I will update them.
Thank you. I'm seeing it as comment only right now.
We have some folks from 1.6 and 1.5 that also needed to get some updates in here before we hit the 30-minute mark. We want to maybe continue some of this in Slack or on the mailing list.
Yeah, I've just updated the permissions, so thank you.
Thank you.
Cool. So if we don't have anything else on 1.7, do we have Anthony around?
Yes, so just a quick update on 1.6. 1.6.4 went out on last Friday, and as a reminder, that was a hotfix release that only contained a couple of things from the release 1.6 branch. The rest of that stuff was moved to now target 1.6.5. There's not a date in mind yet for 1.6.5, so if you have any suggestions or needs on that area, please let me know. And then lastly, there are some tests on the 1.6 branch that are broken, so I'm going to be looking for some people to help look at that. If you have time, please let me know or go ahead and take a look.
Cool. Thanks. So we'll get that in the notes here. And then
I don't think we have Marcin for 1.5.
Okay, no problem then. Cool. So I guess on to SIG updates then. Starting off with SIG cluster lifecycle. Anything new and exciting in the world of lifecycles?
Hello. Hi, everyone.
Yes.
It's Luke here from SIG cluster lifecycle. And we've just got a short update. And we also have a demo from Mike Denise, who I think will be demoing component config very quickly, if that's okay with everyone.
Luke, we're really tight on time today. Is it possible that if we're looking to do a demo, we bump you all to next week?
That's fine, except I'm on vacation next week. So why don't I just give the status updates and then Mike can do the demo next week if there's time.
We can do it that way.
Okay.
I will also be at CoreOS Fest next week.
All right. Well, we can find you.
I didn't know Caleb asked me to do a demo. I could also do it in SIG PM, if that would be a better place. Or in 2 weeks.
Let's take this offline.
Why don't we say it?
Cool. I'll crack on with the update just quickly. So So in for 1.7 is component config, which Mike will demo at some point, maybe in the future. If people want to know more info about component config, he can also describe it at the end of this update. In parallel with that, the SIG is working on a better add-on management proposal. We are working on design for upgrades and HA. Those designs are in progress. We are now targeting self-hosted upgrades in 1.8. Unfortunately, we were not able to get that in for 1.7. But we are going to document how to manually upgrade kubeadm clusters in time for 1.7. So that will at least be an incremental step forwards in that direction. And then also in scope are including cloud provider integrations for kubeadm clusters and paying down technical debt. Honestly, we haven't had quite as much progress as we would have liked in this SIG, in this cycle, but both Weaveworks and Heptio are adding people to help out, so the velocity should increase in the near future. That's the update.
Great. Do we have anything quick from the SIG scalability folks? And just add something.
Is that what he said? I think so. Hey, hey, Bob Wise here. I don't have a full update, and since we're short on time, I think we should push that out. There's one other topic that probably will take a little bit of extra time, but I did want to say that one of the things the group has been working on quite a bit is defining an additional set of, I'll say, larger and cross-provider configurations for large-scale testing. And I'm very happy to say we've been getting direct feedback from, of course, from Google, but from Amazon, from the Azure team, as well as from Packet. And so that's going pretty well. I did want to make the announcement here in case there are any lurking providers on the call that would like to touch base. And I'll also try to figure out how to spread the word generally. We'd love to see as many different kind of similar provider configs for the big clusters as possible. The doc presently is linked to the SIG scalability notes, but we're going to be getting it into the scalability GitHub here in the next few days. That's all I have.
Cool. So I think the governance is the next topic, unless there's something that was meant to go in this left blank intentionally area.
No, that left blank intentionally was so that we didn't run into this this trouble with being tight on time. So we are all set. I suppose people can probably see the governance Bootstrap doc or the shared screen. Yes? Maybe not?
Yes.
Okay, good. So for those of you who have been following along on the far end of our video conferences and GitHubs and Slack and email lists, you've known that we are struggling with what has been characterized in a few different ways, one of which is a giant rocket ship or rocket attached to a bus while we're trying to build wings. Another is a success disaster. We are so successful that we have found all sorts of new and exciting pain points, which is awesome. We're having the right pain points, but one of them is how do we govern this, as we've gone from a Google company-led project over the last year and a half to a community-led project. So in March, we postulated that we needed to figure out how to get to a governance committee that didn't begin with just people from Google nominating who would lead things. We've tried a couple of things over the last 6 months that didn't seem to fit. And so in March, we pulled together a governance committee through a series of emails. And that governance committee, the Bootstrap governance committee, looks like Clayton Coleman, Brendan Phillips, myself, Tim Hawken, Brendan Burns, Joe Beta, and our favorite Brian Grant, who all have long and storied histories with this project, trying to make it a better and longer running, more successful project. So that group was brought together from this March email to do a few things. Specifically, a document that captures where we are. This has been work that's been done on a governance.md file inside our repo, a document that describes what sort of decisions are made at the SIG level and at the project level, and how those decisions are made, which is one of the challenges that we've had from the beginning. And I just kind of jumped in and got started. So anybody else from the Bootstrap Governance Committee should feel free to kibitz and or help if I missed something. So these were the 3 goals that were set forward for the Governance Bootstrap Committee. And we've met a few times over the course of April and May in order to pull together some documents, mostly for review and for forward thinking to help with our later governance work, because there will be more. This is not this is the beginning, not the end. So you can take a look at the meeting reports to see what we have done in short form. We then defined in the largest actual actionable item out of this, we defined what we believe a governing committee, a steering committee in this case, should do and be, and how we can get from our bootstrap state to a steering committee that will guide us going forward. We also documented some of what we're doing now, which is which is work that has been in the bootstrap.md document, as well as more formally trying to put forward a modified lazy consensus instead of a modified lazy consensus seeking process instead of the consensus seeking process, which has gotten us occasionally locked up on not being able to find consensus and not having a way to resolve issues, as well as a recommended project structure for the steering committee as it moves forward. So the what we're doing now, more formalized, turned into a recognition that Node.js has some really interesting governance processes which are similar and related to what we have been doing, but better and worse in some ways. So we've taken some of their work and codified the modified lazy consensus seeking model, as in you have a time period, say, to offer responses to something. You can say +1, you can say -1, and we are not necessarily needing unanimity to move forward. But if we reach a deadlock, we also need to have an escalation process for that. And that's part of what the steering committee will do. We also have continued the simplification work on governance MD, and that's great thanks to Philip Whitrock, who continues to just chip away at that. All of these are documents that you will want to read and review, and we will be accepting and requesting comments on them over the next few weeks. So when we don't agree is the next step. So we had this, yes, we really want to seek consensus and have this be a very grassroots distributed decision-making system. But who makes decisions when we don't agree? And that was really the crux of the problems that we've been having, or in my opinion, the crux of the problems we've been having over the last year is if we didn't find consensus, who do we escalate to, and how is there transparency and accountability on that? So the Bootstrap Committee spent a bunch of time defining the role of the steering committee and what that scope and capabilities are, as well as looking at, although they're not fully baked or ready to share as anything other than a draft, looking at the values that the community has in order to make these decisions and decide where all of the work and the accountability lands. So the steering committee charter gives us a path to create a steering committee from the 7 of us who have been in the Bootstrap committee and grow it on to a elected body. It also talks about being the steering committee's ability to reform governance processes as necessary, because if there's anything that the last year and a half has showed, the process that worked 6 weeks ago or 2 releases ago isn't necessarily going to work in 2 releases. So being able to modify this and recognizing that we are always iterating and learning and growing as a project and a community and a group of people and as a decision-making body is important. Whoops. And how did I even do that? Okay. We will see. Nope. All right, let me pull up the governance Bootstrap document again. I have completely lost that. All right, so let me find and too many layers of indirection into this, so apologies.
I think there's a link in the chat.
Oh, yes, also in the community meeting notes because I thought ahead. However, I am also getting remote control issues. Thank you for that. As soon as I can find.
There were some questions in the chat for you, Sarah, from Josh.
Awesome. We can also just start, if someone can read those out while I am looking for this. There's my presentation.
So the one that's visible is what's the process for reconsidering steering committee decisions in the event of dispute over governance? I'm not sure I understand the question. The steering committee is the ultimate decision maker. Hopefully it is invoked seldomly. If somebody disagrees with the steering committee decision, there is no further escalation path as far as I recall.
Correct.
I would agree.
You can fork the project.
Yes.
Yeah.
So a question about your node reference. Given that community went through, I think it would be fair to say a somewhat divisive period, which I believe was at least about governance issues. What was the lessons you were taking kind of specifically around that, or?
No, the lessons that we were taking were primarily from what came out of that. So the lessons that we were drawing from were from their existing governance documentation and governance set, which came on the heels of that reconciliation.
Excellent, thank you.
But we didn't take the documented process, we took the process that came out of that.
Right. Okay, so jumping further, let me see if there are other process for reconsideration, pitchforks, +1s. Okay. All right, so the steering committee scope, the steering committee ends up being the ultimate responsibility or the ultimately responsible party for the growth and health and stewardship of the project. But I'd like to point out again that it is intended that the steering committee distribute and delegate the majority of this responsibility to existing and new community groups. So while this is where everything rolls up, the value and the intent of the community is in its ability to be autonomous and distributed in its decision making. And that is something that we have run across again and again. And so there is certainly always a tension between a group who has, ultimate decider authority and a distributed decision-making system. But if we hold true to the values that that we have exhibited through this and are working to document, then through the growth of this community, then we actually get to a space where, as Tim mentioned, the steering committee is infrequently invoked. The best possible case would be the steering committee meets, sits around and says, well, we didn't have any issues. What do we think about this other thing that might be a year or 2 years out in the future in order to help guide things in the long term? This also leads to who actually drives consensus in this. So it's not the steering committee. It is actually the groups that have the decision-making authority and who are distributed to and closer to the code, the work, and the people that make up the community. And those groups would then be special interest group working groups, and committees. SIGs look almost exactly like they look now. I don't actually know of any way SIGs don't look like they do now, short of being clear that every identifiable subpart.
Yeah, this is just a refinement.
Yep.
And it's been under discussion for quite a while that we want to, and we have owners and we have test owners and things like that, but those are all rolled up to individuals since we're moving to this more distributed model. And we need to be able to deal with people on vacation, people who leave the project, etc. We talked about also ensuring that every part of the project falls under some SIG, so that there are mechanisms for oversight, broader oversights, and backfilling people who leave the project and things like that.
I think one of the differences between a working group and a SIG is that SIGs sort of have longitudinal responsibility over artifacts that are part of the project. And so, you know, making that line brighter and more obvious is gonna help steer people in the right direction and sort of make it easier for people to make progress with the SIGs.
Which leads us to working groups.
Wait, can you go back a second? What this is longitudinal? That sentence was really lots of big words, and I didn't understand exactly.
Over time, they essentially help steward sort of a set of code and you know, artifacts that are part of the project over time.
When you mean artifacts, you mean like code and design documents? Code docs.
Every identifiable subpart of the project.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure I understood. That's all. I apologize.
Yeah,
I know it's just make sure for this context.
Yep. Everything is intended to be owned or roll up to a SIG somewhere or another.
Yeah, and we could see this, that we've been moving in this direction. For example, when Garrett was talking about every issue must have a SIG label, right? So this is not a change. This is just documenting the direction we are going.
Yep. And we have found that we need another type of body. We've used this a couple of times, working groups. They are collections of people that may come from across multiple special interest groups, maybe a subform of a special interest group, to facilitate specific work that is either little or completely cross-cutting or not necessarily tied to a specific code chunk. We're still working on, and as a community, we all have to work on what is that bright line between working group and SIG and when are things appropriate, and also just have some flexibility. We started contributor experience as a short-lived working group, and then we realized that the contributor experience will always be important, and it became a SIG. So we will see these things move, and working groups, the idea is to make a lighter weight starter space as well, so that you can create them and get rid of them as you need them, and not necessarily expect, to Joe's point, that they will have longitudinal responsibilities on code or other artifacts.
So somebody back channeled to me. I just want to make clear this stuff about SIGs and working groups and stuff like this. This is a proposal to give you a flavor of the type of stuff that we want the steering committee to ratify and work with the steering committee. This stuff is not official coming out of the Bootstrap process, but is sort of a starting point for the full committee to actually work with.
Yeah, I think like Sarah glossed over it a little bit, but the really important point here is that the main part of this proposal is a plan to transfer ownership and steering committee-ship from the 7 people in this Bootstrap committee to a panel of people who are really truly elected by the committee. We have a plan. Go read the charter. It's not very long. And at the end of that, we have a steering committee who will then choose to either ratify some of the things we put out here or choose to modify them. But we are not imposing that. We're saying we think this is a reasonable way to go, and we want the people to decide.
The index document actually shows that the only thing that the Bootstrap group was really chartered with deciding and making a plan to go forward on was this steering committee charter. Really, like, what is the one thing? How do we get from here to the group that actually decides this? And then we can make recommendations, and we can kind of set forward. And as we were set forward suggestions, as we were having all of these discussions about what group can lead this community and how to get there, all of these pieces are are ancillary discussions, but important foundational discussions. So we wanted to document the conversations as we were having them and use them as we're moving toward the steering committee work and ratification. So none of this should be considered any, well, the steering committee charter we'd like feedback on as the way we get to the next step. But this group ultimately really only gets to decide how to get to the steering committee charter and make recommendations on the rest of this. So Tim's right, I did gloss over that. Apologies. All right.
One quick question, if that's okay. I was just wondering if this, we call it a steering committee, if one of its responsibilities or mandates is to try to help the SIGs to be, very effective. My observation is that some SIGs are more successful than others, and there's potentially some role which is to, take the highly successful SIGs and perhaps have them mentor the less successful SIGs, or is that not something that the steering committee sees as one of its responsibilities?
Pretty much all of project health seems to me to roll up to steering committee scope. So vision, value, missions, and scope of all of this. I think in order to make this a happy, healthy community, we have to have the steering committee help that, and we have to have each of the SIGs help as well, helping one another.
And you can see
Go
that.
ahead, Brian.
Oh yeah, I mean, policy for defining new community groups and also project governance structures and policies. And so definitely as time goes on, we expect to provide more guidance to SIGs and to share best practices across SIGs. We discussed putting together templates and materials to make it easier to start new SIGs with an understanding of what some recommended best practices are. But we're going to allow SIGs to tune those as they need for how that SIG chooses to operate in a way that's effective to that SIG. Hopefully we can start this at the Leadership Summit. There are going to be a couple of sessions to share knowledge among the different SIGs and to discuss how SIGs can operate better. So that is important to us, and hopefully we'll do it outside of those meetings as well, but I do hope to have those kinds of meetings at least once or twice a year.
So a fine point, I mean, like keeping the community healthy is going to be the responsibility of the steering committee, but the goal is for the steering committee to, as much as possible, delegate this to other things. So like maybe there would be a SIG or a committee or a working group or some other structure that could be like, SIG Meta or SIG Health or something like that. So
contributor experience, who is working very hard to do both community as well as tooling.
I also see operations as being a critical.
Thanks. Yeah, that answers my question. That's great.
I'd love to see a meta operations group too, so that we can tie all these operational threads together.
Operational user threads or operational project threads?
Essentially, a funnel in for user feedback from the field and a funnel out for all the, basically a SIG of SIGs, or not SIG of SIGs, Scrum of Scrums across all the like SIG cluster ops, SIG cluster lifecycle, all those different things. Because right now it feels like SIG sprawl in ops land, and it's really hard to keep track of.
Okay.
So dealing with SIG sprawl is definitely something that the steering committee could take up and get creative about finding solutions there.
Okay. This, as we have said, is a huge work in progress, and we'll continue to take thoughts and feedback on it because it's awesome. So we did go ahead and define a third group that we think is very important, and this came up, it came up as work that is being done already but isn't quite different, but is for topics requiring discretion. For topics that need to happen in, hashed out behind closed doors, we have to have a way and accepted means to do this. So we've defined committees. So security, code of conduct work, this Bootstrap committee, a lot of this had to happen quite, with a very small group, not completely in the public, just to get us over some of the more contentious and or discrete points that needed discussion. So like SIGs or working groups, there would be a charter, there would be a lead, and the reporting up to, at a minimum, the steering committee, but also to the community is going to be a part of what is required of committees. And for those of you who are interested in code of conduct work, please talk to me because we have a code of conduct committee that is forming. We also spent a lot of time discussing cross-project communication. This is to Jace's point of it's hard to track all the SIGs, everyone's points of how do I keep track of what's in a release. This is one of our largest pain points, and we want to fix it a number of ways. And we need to continue to work with all of us in this direction, which is distributing decision-making as much as possible and then facilitating communication across the whole project in a more standardized, more complete way when it is necessary. Because we want to push things to be as encapsulated and distributed as possible, but there's still a lot that touches the whole of the project. And processes, proposals, project-wide impact, we need to pull together a consistent plan and a standard as to how we are going to have how this is going to be communicated from the special interest groups that may be making the decisions, or how they seek and drive consensus to a decision across a whole project. But to the end of what does the steering committee do in this case, extended debate or deadlock, decisions can be escalated to the steering committee. And explicitly in all of the docs that you will read later that are referenced in here, we want to say that escalation to the steering committee should be the exception. Like, if the steering committee has a full agenda every time it tries to meet, that's a very different problem, and that is not the way this group expects it to exist. So what might this look like as a diagram? We've got a steering committee roughly at the top. We have project-wide special interest groups like release, contrib, XPM, docs testing. There might in a future time be governance or architecture special interest groups. You also have horizontal special interest groups that touch a lot of code that impacts people project-wide. So that might be all CLI, UI, API machinery. And then you have more vertical special interest groups who are more isolated and more focused on different topical work that might be app-related, resource management related, administration related, or cloud related. What's next for all of us, as we have 6 minutes left? We want comments on all the Google Docs that are shared today until the middle of June.
They're not very long.
They're not long. Please read them. Please offer comments. Please ask where things are confusing. I mean, we tried really hard to make these concise, and you'll even see things like, there should be a process here, but that's not the point of this doc. So those will come in time as the steering committee is formed, and then the steering committee works through the work that needs to be done through delegation, ideally, and through governance as well. So comments on the Google Docs that we've shared this morning. Then once we get to a close period get to the close of this comment period, we will move the documents into, move the document content into GitHub and still reference back to the discussions that existed in the Google Docs, but move them to GitHub as a final place, as a next step place, because as I said, this governance is going to continue to evolve as our project evolves. We are also working to formalize timeline and process to nominate and vote on the steering committee members. So read through that process. That's the one. If you do nothing else in all of this, please read through the steering committee charter and election process, because that's going to be the group and the way we get to some overarching authority in this. Authority is the wrong word, but it is. It's where the accountability rolls up to for this project. So if you do nothing else, take a look at and comment on the steering committee recommendation, or the steering committee proposal. Anyone else from the Bootstrap committee first who thinks I missed something? Wow, okay, thanks. Any other questions from the community at the moment in the next 4 minutes?
You guys did a fantastic job. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. I have to say thanks to all of the rest of the Bootstrap committee too, because this has been great fun to do.
Oh, and we thank you, Sarah, for wrangling. Yes.
So one thing that I do want to say is I want to encourage everybody, even if you don't consider yourself a leader in the community, to think about whether you want to actually nominate yourself or nominate other people that you think should be part of the steering committee. I think a big part of our goal out of this is to have a diverse in terms of types and backgrounds, and all sorts of ways, set of people, experience levels, in addition to sort of having a bench where people can get more involved and grow in their leadership stature with respect to the community. So please consider putting yourself or talking to somebody else and encouraging them to run for the steering committee.
Is there a nomination process available right now for that?
Not yet. That is in our next steps, is to formalize the timeline and process. So there's one point that I did not mention, but is worth mentioning. When we were trying to decide how to define the steering committee and how to set forward who could vote and who could run, we determined that we wanted one of those two things to be bounded. Who could be nominated could be bounded, or who could vote could be bounded. And we opted to bound who could vote more tightly because we wanted the who could run to be a broader scope and a broader pool. And so please, we are completely serious in saying, get people who might not necessarily think they should run, ask them to run if you think they should participate. Engage people and encourage people through leadership and mentorship of yourself to learn and grow within this community as well, because we need to be growing the next set of leaders. So you may say, I don't have time, but I know somebody who's been with the project a shorter amount of time, but is a fantastic asset, and please encourage them.
Is there a short answer to the question of who can vote?
It's in the charter doc. So there is a short answer. It's outlined in the charter doc.
There's a short answer and an escape clause.
Yes.
For anybody who feels they should have a vote but didn't fall into the criteria that we picked.
Yep. All right. I think we're at time. I'm sure there's lots of ways to offer.
There's a couple announcements.
Please go.
Yeah, go ahead. Go on, Elon.
I was just going to say, it looks like there's a couple sort of announcements in the agenda here as well. I'll just give a shout out. It sounds like the new stack is doing a Kubernetes user survey. There's a new SIG around Azure that's meeting Wednesdays, and a few other things. So if you have a chance, please take a look in the notes for places that folks are looking for help. And yep, I think we are now officially at 2 o'clock, so we can call it.
Have a great day. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.